the challenge is, as we might discover in the next part of the conversation, it's not the easiest thing to explain to people who have been conventionally conditioned to think a particular way. So it requires a different kind of inquiring and exploring. That's why I call it before psychology. But once people start to realize it, it absolutely is the secret sauce to anything in life, work, peace, performance, potential.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Exploring You, our guide to help you through the jungle of personal development and mental health and all that. My name's Darren Siegenberg. I have the Mind Core CIC and Elysium NLP.
And I'm Alexandra Katze, nature coach and forest bathing guide.
And as we have our special guest today is Mr. Piers Thurston. Hi, Piers.
Hello. Nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me on. Looking forward to the chat. Great
stuff. Yeah, we were just saying there off air that it's been a long time since we've seen you, or I've seen you anyway. It's Alexandra's first time. So first and foremost, who are you?
Do you mean at a profound level or a practical level? Let's keep it practical for the moment. So yeah, I'm Piers. I've been a coach for almost 25 years now. I started a long time ago. I work with a range of clients, but my focus area now tends to be owner-managed businesses, business founders, entrepreneurs, leaders. But I also work with big corporates and I work with some private clients. And over the last sort of 25 years of my career, I've shifted in modality from sort of what I'd now call conventional coaching, which used to be lots of sort of positive psychology, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, lots and lots of tools and techniques, goal-based coaching, values-based coaching, etc. And that all sort of changed about 15 years ago when I came across something that really is an absolute game changer and was way more transformative than I realized. So back then I thought what I was doing with my NLP and my coaching was pretty transformative, and it did make a difference to people, no doubt about it. You know, I loved it and it was very powerful. But this, what I now call quality of mind, before psychology, is a real changer. The challenge is, as we might discover in the next part of the conversation, it's not the easiest thing to explain to people who have been conventionally conditioned to think a particular way. So it requires a different kind of inquiring and exploring. That's why I call it before psychology. But once people start to realize it, it absolutely is the secret sauce to anything in life, work, peace, performance, potential. So that's my career in a nutshell. From a personal level, I'm 50 years old. I've got 2 kids, and I live in Berkshire. So that's me.
Place. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned about the quality. I mean, you focus, your approach, as you quote, focuses on an inquiry into the nature of mind, reality, and what we are. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, that sounds like something I'd write, Darren. Yeah.
So how do you focus on it? What is the inquiry into as you look at that?
Yeah, so there's actually 2 parts of that, because there's what we mean by inquiry and what we're inquiring into, and they're linked. So I call quality of mind before psychology. So when I was doing my other coaching, NLP, etc., we were very much looking into, your thoughts, your concepts, your beliefs, your narratives, or your feeling system, etc. And we were looking to try and change those patterns and ways of thinking, so you could have better thoughts, so you could think better, so you could have different behaviors, so you can have different actions, so you can have different results. I now look more upstream to that. So whereas I thought was where it all started, I thought it started at, okay, we don't want to change our outside world, let's change the inside world. So with NLP, you're changing the inside world. But there's a bit before that. Now, that's the bit we're like, well, what's that? Which is what the quote's referring to. What we're looking at there is, and this sounds at one level like nothing when I just say it, but this is where nature of inquiry comes in. So we're looking to see what we are essentially. And what I mean by that is, what is it about us that comes and goes and what doesn't? So the way I like to frame this is, if imagine an alien popped down and they can speak English. They're very clever, this alien. And they were asking us this question because they don't know anything about us. And they said, right, okay, how do you do being you, right? And if you were to explain to them, not using everything you've learned and been taught by school or society about what you are, but just to go to direct experience. What I mean by direct experience is, and this is what the nature of the inquiry is, not what we're inquiring, but the nature of how to inquire. If you literally look at any moment, could be this moment right now as we're recording this, or listeners as you're sitting in your armchair, if you look at what is going on within the human experience, what you'll find is, and people can do this, and I've got lots of podcasts on how to do this more, you'll see that thoughts, feelings, and perceptions are coming in and out of the system, right? So I had a thought about lunch. Oh, I had I can see my computer screen. Things come and go. Now, none of those things are what we are essentially, because they're all coming and going. The thing we think we are essentially is me, Piers, you, Darren, you, Alexandra. We would say, well, I start at me, right? And I've been told by science that I've got a brain, and my brain has a conscious experience of something out there, right? Which might be a tree, it might be a taste of chocolate, the feeling of velvet, or it has an experience of something in my head, like a thought, or oh, I can imagine what the football score is going to be on the weekend, right? And we think that's all been done sort of as me, an entity. So as me, Piers does that. Piers's brain generates that, and Piers ends at the end of his fingers here and at the top of his head here. And it's my body mind that runs the show. Like that's the epicenter. Now, let's go back to our alien. If our alien was experiencing that, the alien would go, I don't see that. I don't see that separation you're talking about, because all I see is even the idea of me, Piers, is a thought. It's a perception. Why do you think it starts with you, Piers? Why do you think, to put a sciencey name on it, why do you think consciousness is generated by the brain or by Piers's brain, when the only way we've ever experienced a brain or Piers's brain is via consciousness, right? So you start to go, oh yeah, actually, the me that I think it's all coming from is part of the content. It's a very persistent part of the content, but it's part of the content. And there's something that's aware, if I can use that phrase, the language gets a bit loose here, or a bit tricky. There's something that's aware of Piers, because I can be aware of Piers, because listeners, as you've been sitting there for the last few seconds or few minutes, there's probably been times when you haven't had any awareness of you, the entity, you, the person, until I just said that. And you went, oh yeah, there's me, or there's my hand, right? So there's times when we disappear. And actually, what's really interesting, this is where it comes to performance now, rather than this just being some scientific hobby-goggly or philosophy, is if you think about a time when you're really in flow, let's say you're loving your hobby, or you're chatting with your friends, or you're just in a creative place, or whatever, the day's just going beautifully, when you're in flow, when you're in nature. People would even say, I lost myself in that conversation, in that book, in that sunset I just lost myself, right? So what we start to find is that when we're really at our best, if you like, and non-suffering, there's no me anyway. It's just coming through the system. And then go the other side. When you're struggling, suffering, caught up in your funk, there's a lot of me going on. There's the world happening at me, to me. Oh my gosh, I've lost my job. What am I going to do? That person's being nasty. You know, it looks, where's my resourcefulness? I need to get my motivation. Where's my energy? Oh, I've got to go and find it. Oh, I've lost it. Right? Where's love? Oh, it's outside there and I'm here. Right. So when we're struggling, there feels like there's a lot of me. When we're in flow, in the zone, we want to call it, there's no me. Now, I'm just generalizing this for the moment. Now, the answer really is through this, what we call the direct inquiry, because the direct inquiry, in a way, sort of can't lie. And by direct inquiry, remember, what we're saying is go and check this out for yourself in direct experience, not ask science or ask philosophy or ask your neighbor or ask a book. What do you know? Imagine you're the alien popping in, coming down, and the first time you've never been taught anything. What you would notice is stuff that comes and goes, thoughts, feelings, perceptions. And there's something that you can't really describe or put your finger on that is there before. There's something that's aware of all of that. And if we take away each of the, if we go to the space before thought, feeling, and perception, we kind of get a sense there's something. We don't really know what it is, right? That's what we are essentially. So when I ask the question, what are we essentially? That's what we are essentially. So when you asked me at the beginning, I slightly joked, who are you or something? I was like, well, actually who I am is consciousness, right? There's an avatar that's Piers, that's been around 50 years and lives in Berkshire, but that's all thought and perception. The thing that's essential about me, the thing that never, ever changes, that I am and you are too, is this thing before that. Now, this might all sound a bit abstract, profound, and woo-woo, but what we start to find through inquiry is there's huge value, benefits. It's a wonderful leverage point for the secret source to recognize that's what you are, because then you're not limited by the avatar self thinking the world is a certain way or thinking its resourcefulness is limited, self-identifying with its experience of being separate. And when you get out of the way of that, wow, you just spend more time in flow. Now, I've just rambled on there for, I don't know, 5-10 minutes. Does that make any sense, or where did I lose you in that?
I'm too deep in it. I'm away with it. It got me when you said that. It's interesting, like when you say you're more, I suppose you're more creative and you're more you than when you're not in that experience or that thought than any other time of your life. So I get that bit.
Yeah. So, you ask sports people about how they did it and they go, I don't really know. I just kind of did. When you fall in love, you kind of lose yourself in the other person. When you're writing a book, and it's been a brilliant book you've written or a paragraph, you just came out my fingers.
I suppose it's like when you go on a journey. If you're going to work every single day, you go to the same place, then one day you realize, how the hell did I get here? Because you've not actually given it any thought as to getting there. But you're going to get there. You don't have to look at it.
Most things we do. I mean, as you're sitting here right now, I mean, in the UK, it's after lunch. Is anyone psychologically digesting their lunch? No.
Psychological? No, I've had it already. So
no, what I mean is, are you having to put psychological effort into digesting lunch?
No.
Or pumping the heart round?
No.
Or feeling the cut on your finger? Healing the cut on your finger? No. All of that happens. So we would say, or blinking, we would say, oh, nature does that. Nature does that, right? Now, when it comes to being happy, being resourceful, being clever, being smart, being resilient, being a genius, being non-suffering, we go, no, that's me. I need to do that. I, Piers, need to do that. We make this line that we go, we're okay with being nature doing us, being lived for certain things. But when it comes to my self-development and growth and setting my goals and being happy in the world, no. That goes to the self. And we start to find this fascinating thing when we inquire, and you can inquire into, am I really the doer and chooser of thoughts? Right. So you can try this one out right now. Yeah. Let's say, I mean, I've got a glass of water here, right? And it would look like I have the choice whether to drink that or not. That's what most people would say. Well, please, yeah. I mean, it looks like you could just go sip or not sip. But I only have the choice to do that if the thought appears to me, Piers, you can have some water if you want, or whatever it is. Yeah. Either I just do it without even noticing, like you're saying, walking to work. I might have sipped some water earlier and not even noticed, right? But let's say cognitively, I go, I can have water now or not. But that can only, if that thought is available in the system, then there's choice. But if that thought isn't available in the system, there's no choice. Is that fair to say?
Yep. Yep.
So do I choose which thoughts come in the system?
Yes.
Do I? How? Just tell me how you do that.
Not necessarily.
Well, never. I mean, go to direct inquiry. Go Martian. Go Alien. Do you ever choose? Even if you have a thought saying, I chose that thought, even if the thought appeared, I chose that thought itself came from where?
So is it a bit like a consciousness, your true essence, without all the conditioning that you experienced when growing up?
Yeah, I mean, it's the word consciousness is so loaded, but what we're pointing to is that in any moment we can either, what I would call, be in our psychology, or be, again, these words are so unhelpful, an essence. We can be what I call back, which is in the raw isness, right? Where there's no apparent separate me. There's just the coming and going of thought, perception, and sensation at the rawest sense, right? Now, that's still the isness that turns up, the happening that turns up is still going to be determined by the programming that you are, because that determines whether, because our programming does determine what turns up for us in perception. So someone, for example, who's a botanist going for a walk is going to have different thoughts to a 5-year-old kid, because a botanist is probably going to go, oh, there's a daffodil, blah, 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 right? Whatever botanists do, right? And they're going to notice things, whereas the 5-year-old's just thinking about football or whatever they're thinking about, right? So the programming does make a difference. But in this, really key, there's no programmer. So NLP was called neuro-linguistic programming, but I always thought there was a programmer. No, there's programming, but no programmer. Like there's thinking, but no thinker. There's choosing, but no chooser. There's doing, but no doer. There's no separate doer, thinker, chooser. It's all, we're being lived. But we then think there is a me that, because it looks like it sometimes, that I can choose whether to have the water or not. Well, I chose that. I didn't. It just appeared like that. And the consequence of that is when we recognize that, wow, it frees up psychological freedom. Because if you think being better in the world or being happy in the world is up to you, me, then that's hard work. Whereas when I realize it's all happening like a leaf falling from a tree, like I don't think a tree cares how the leaves fall. They just do. We would go, that's nature. Like we don't really care how often we blink, right? But we do care how happy we are, right? So, and actually it's the thinking it's down to me that actually gets in the way of the beauty of the system. I mean, it's very simple to see where this works really well. When we're infants, the system works beautifully at learning. I mean, just think what they cover in 2 or 3 years of growth. And they're not thinking they're separate. So little tiny, this is an amazing thing. I don't know if you can cast your mind back to a baby, but there's a time when a young infant starts to get the idea that they are a me, they're not born thinking they're a separate me at all. They even then start in language to use third person. They'll say, Piers' cup, daddy's cup. You know, that they won't recognize themselves in the mirror. So babies are not a separate self. That they don't have that thinking yet. They see themselves as part of the universe, which is why they're perfectly happy just sort of lying on their back, just being zen. And they're staring at their hands going, what is that? Right? So the self is conceptual. It's not innate. But we've got what I call the biggest misunderstanding of decades, is that we think we are the separate self. We think we are the Darren or the Piers or the Alexandra, and we're not. We're not essentially. We are that avatar too, but we are something more fundamental than that. And when we recognize that, we have more flow, peace, productivity, performance, love, everything we're after. It's taken me a couple of decades to get there, but to me, it seems so simple now. Not easy, but simple.
And how do you get there in one session? Or how does this work? I'm just trying to get my head around it, like listening to you, trying to understand what it's being said, and now thinking, okay, and how is this applied? Coaches go away with like, oh, okay.
It's a great question, because that's what our mind does. It goes, how do I do it? How do I do it? How do I do it? How? Oh my God, he's selling the elixir, the magic bullet. How? Well, the first thing is you stop asking the blimmin' how question, because who's asking that question? Who's asking that? The self, right? The self. Now, let me ask you another question. How do you manage to do gravity?
It's just there.
We don't.
Right. Yeah. Okay, great. Right. Same thing. So we don't do this. We see it. We see through the illusion, right? It's already there. So this is why the inquiry piece of this is so important, because the how answer, so the answer to that question, how, is by recognizing what we already are and realizing what we're not, which is the separate self, time, space, matter, the body, you know. So, and actually that can happen in right now. You can have a fleeting glimpse of this through the inquiry, right? Right now, if we, you know, and I've got other podcasts on this, or we can do it right now. If you notice there's thoughts, feelings, and perceptions coming and going in the system right now, you can close your eyes or whatever. Just notice thought, feeling, and perception come and go. There'll be an image here. There'll be a sound there. There'll be a thought there. It's coming and going, coming and going, coming and going. And if you can just notice that there's something that it's coming and going in, a space, a container, whatever you want to call it. These are all unhelpful words, but there's something that's aware of the thought coming, the perception, the image, the sound, the sensation, the feeling. There's something that's aware of that. There's an aliveness that is there pre the content. And if you just explore that, now your mind's going to get busy going, oh, that's my perceptual system, that's my consciousness. No. Go to the direct experience of it. You know, you could ask yourself a question, am I aware right now? Am I aware? Go direct experience. Am I aware right now? And what would the answer be?
For me, it would be a yes, I'm aware of sitting here.
Well, no, forget the of what, forget the after, what you're aware of, because you could be aware of thinking it's time to get off this call, or you could be aware of anything, doesn't matter. Forget the aware of, the bit after the of, just are you aware? What's the answer? Not a trick question. Just find out.
It sounds like it.
No.
I suppose aware of presence. Again, it's that of bit. You can't get away from the of bit, can you?
Yeah. So just go before the of. You're quite right. The of catches us out. So just go before the of. Simple question, right? Imagine you're 6 years old, if it's helpful. Are you aware? How many thoughts you got going on right now?
Oh God, about 5 million at the
Right.
moment.
Okay. So you know there's 5 million thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Are you aware of them?
Not of every one of them, no.
No. But are you aware of thought?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's how you knew you had them, because you said, "Oh my God, I got," you know. So let's even if you've got no thought right now, you might be aware of your chair. You might be aware of my voice, the temperature, right? Because I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the answer to the question, "Are you aware?" is always yes. It's like, are you alive? How do you know you're alive? That's the other way of asking it. How do you know you're alive?
Because we're here now.
But how do you know that?
I can feel a pulse in my finger as I'm
Right.
leaning on it.
So okay. The pulse is the content, but there's something aware of the pulse, right? You notice a pulse. Someone else might notice, oh, there's my hand, or there's my voice, right? So the of doesn't matter, the after the of, but we're always aware. Is it possible not to be aware? No. Deep sleep, we can answer that if anyone wants to know. But you're aware of absence is the answer. But so we're always aware. So that awareness, the capacity for awareness, not the content, never, ever changes or goes away. Whatever you're aware of, whether you're sick, healthy, 5 years old, 20 years old, 500 years old, well, I don't know, 50 years old, right? Whether you're from Papua New Guinea and whether you're from California, what you're aware of changes. But the capacity to be aware is universal, consistent, and eternal. So when we ask the question, what are we? The Martian said to us, what are we? The alien said to us, what are we? What are we essentially? I'm not what I think of, because that changes. I'm the bit before that. So little metaphor time. Sky and weather. Right? Weather comes and goes, especially in the UK. Right?
Yeah.
Sky, but that's just there. Does the sky care about the weather? I know it's a bit of an odd question. Does it matter? Can the weather damage the sky?
No.
No. Another metaphor. The screen you're watching right now that you might watch Netflix on or whatever you're going to do, right? The screen and the show, the screen and the Netflix. Does the screen care about the Netflix? No. Does the screen ever go? No. We notice, but what do we get fascinated by? Oh, the Netflix. Wow, it's fascinating. I love it. And most of the time, the screen and the Netflix are so merged together, just like the sky and the weather are merged together. We don't even notice the sky or the screen. We just go, well, that's just the TV. Now, what we're saying in the first part of direct inquiry is, let's just pull those two things apart for a moment. Let's just demerge and unhook. The capacity for awareness, which never ever goes, is essential, undamageable, and universal, and the content. Pull those two things apart, because normally we just go, oh, it's just the experience. We merge them together. Now, when we pull them apart, you start to see, oh yeah, that does come and go. But you also notice something really interesting. The thing you thought was doing all the seeing, perceiving, and feeling, me, Piers, oh my God, that's part of the content. I thought I was the screen. I am, but not at a Piers level, at a level before Piers. Because, question, can I be aware of Piers? Can you be aware of Darren? Can you be aware of Alexandra? And the answer is, yeah, I can be aware of me. Look, there's my hand. Oh, there's a thought. I'm Darren. If you can be aware of it, it's got to be in the content. Because the subject object, right? So if you can be aware of it, remember, I was saying forget the of. Well, where does me come in? Me comes in after the of. Because there's times when I'm not aware of me. So yes, I'm two things. I'm essentially awareness itself, consciousness itself, but I'm also the avatar Piers. Right? Now the avatar Piers is made of thought and perception, which means it's real but never true. And it keeps changing. Except when I try and stick it together with my conceptual mind that likes it to be permanent and stable, but it's not. Now, a little bit profound this sometimes, but actually it's ridiculously practical once you start to see it. But are you getting a little resonance of what I'm trying to point to here?
I am.
So,
It's certainly
sort
on a
of.
different level. Yes, at the hell of a level to
Before
get
the psychology, that's what we call it, before psychology.
Yeah.
Is it a bit like, you know, when you meditate and you get sort of, I wouldn't say out of body experience, but when you are in this complete stillness?
Yeah.
That's sort of a bit.
Yes. So, and the reason people often meditate is because they like the feeling of that, right? Now, the reason we're doing direct inquiry isn't because we want to feel that nice space, although it is a lovely experience. We're actually doing it to point to, this is what's called the non-dual inquiry. We're actually doing it to point to our case of mistaken identity. So having a nice meditative state is lovely. It's a nice way to spend the day, and it can calm you down, and it's good for all sorts of things. But it's not transformative because you have to keep doing it, right? So every day I'm going to do my meditation. Every day I'm going to do my mindfulness. Every day I'm going to do my yoga. And we use it some people use it as an antidote for their busy lives. They go and do some mindfulness or meditation or whatever it is. They get a contact high. Now, that's nice. Knock yourself out with that. But what we're pointing to is something transformative, is that when you go back and you notice what that space is or what it isn't, you realize in that space, what I call going back, you realize there's no self as an entity in there. There's no permanence to time, space, and matter. It's just people call it all sorts of things, like an infinite blob. It's just a nothingness that everything comes from. But it's very spacious. And it also has this sense of aliveness and possibility and even love in it. It's our spiritual home. And these words are going to get very woo-woo in a minute, so I'm careful. So, but there is something about that essence of us, if you want, that infinite blob that is pre the self, that is always there, that is undamageable by the content. Doesn't matter what you put in it, put on the sky, it's fine. Whatever you put it, in the room, it doesn't damage the room. And when we recognize we're that at an embodied level, that we have more flow in life. So there's still stuff going on. We're still in the game of life. We're still in business. We're still in relationships. But there's that wonderful feeling of flow and potential and love and humility and joy and inspiration just comes through more because we're not self-identifying with the self. We are embodying more of that wider universal space. And we've all had experiences of this in the moments of flow. But what really the benefit of quality of mind is, you want to nutshell it, is you end up spending a lot more of your day in this flow state without having to do tools and techniques. It's just how you live. It just turns up. And then when you do have the lovely richness of being a human being, and you get caught up, and you get, because there's a richness to the isness. It doesn't. You don't self-identify with it, so it just comes and goes. You're more like a 3-year-old. So you have your highs and lows, but they don't stick, and they're just part of the richness, rather than, oh my gosh, now this is going on. What am I going to do about it? How do I fix it? Etc. Etc.
What comes to my mind is a bit like ego has completely to die.
Yeah. So
and then there is this isness.
Yeah. The ego at a self-identified level disappears. There's still the flavor of consciousness that is you, right? So you're still you, but the egoic attachment to being you goes, if that makes sense. And it's the egoic attachment that leads to seeking and protecting. So a lot of our behaviors, mindsets, and attitudes are about seeking and protecting the self. So if you check yourself out or check others out, you'll see we're doing a lot to self and protect. Now, when you realize the you is an avatar, the ego you, there's no need to do that. So you don't become a homogeneous clone when you go back to this and have no you. You're still you, but there's no self-identification with the you. So it's much more humble. There's still your flavor that's you, which is beautiful, which is lovely, but you're not attached to it, and you don't try and make it a better you or judge it for being a bad you. You just, whatever that programming has created, but there's no attachment to it, and therefore there's no seeking and protecting, and that's very freeing.
It sounds a bit, or that was just the thought that just came for me was like, it sounds a bit like a combo experience in shamanism, where you like the poisonous of the frog or the poison of the frog, and you go through this experience of letting go of all identifications.
Yeah.
Is that sort
a lot
of similar?
Yeah.
Or?
I mean, mystics over the millennia have pointed to this. Ayahuasca, all of these things, plant medicine, and shamanics, are all pointing here. They have their rituals and tools of how to do it. Right. Some people say, you know, the Advaita, you got to go on a 30-year, you know, self-abidance path, and then you'll be ready to, you know. No, to me, this is the most accessible, direct way for anyone without having to go through rituals of shamanics or plant medicine. I mean, you can do all that if you like, you know, great experiences, but they're all pointing back. And I suppose for me, it's seeing the simplicity of the direct inquiry that allows you to go there without having to have any of the woo-woo or ritual. So part of my kind of vision is that to democratize what these mystics and spiritual teachers over years and millennia and have been pointing to, make it non-esoteric, non-ritual based, non-practice based, and just seeing the directness of it. And myself and a colleague, Katrin, we've created something called Taste the Mango, right? And the reason we like that name is, I don't know whether you've, you know, tasted a fresh mango, but there's something about tasting a fresh mango that's like, oh, that is so undescribable, right? It's just so lovely, the fresh mango. But what a lot of people do in the spiritual seeking world or any seeking world is they think a lot about their mangoes, and they maybe line a few up and they compare them and they smell them and they look at them, and then they kind of, you know, throw them around, but they don't actually just go direct, because we don't know how to go direct, because we're, like you guys experienced earlier, we're so taught to think. So we think our way to trying to understand this no self, and you can't think your way to no self, because by definition, the thought is the thing that is you got to go before. I use a childhood sort of game I used to play, is, you know, checking whether the fridge light goes off when the door shuts. You can't do that. Just like you can't think your way to no self. Doesn't work. But you can see it if you just taste it. But then the mind goes, oh, and jumps ahead. So that's what I mean. There's a little bit of reorientation needed to understand what we mean by the direct inquiry, but then you start to see it. And then once you start to see it, it's hard to escape. Because it is going back to that nothingness, you know, but it's not living a life without nothing. It's actually a very rich life, but you realize that you're the container, not the content.
Oh, I remember somebody, and I've used it a few times myself, is that when someone said, you know, can you think what your next thought's going to be? And then you get that befuddled look on someone's face, and you go, well, you've just reset your mind like you would do with a computer, but you can't think what that next thought's going to be.
No. Absolutely. You might have a few ideas and you might try and go, right, at 3:47, I'm going to have the thought banana, right? And I can have a go at that. But there's no certainty I would be able to do that, right?
Mm.
So it makes me laugh now when I think about some of the things I was trying to do in NLP, you know, because that was very much sort of trying to control thought or control what the mind's up to. And I realize now when I look back down that all the stuff I was doing in the NLP, the reason it was successful wasn't for the reason I thought it was. The reason it's successful is that, and people had shifts and changes, is because at one level, the self-mind was no longer seeking or protecting. And in that, we get a lovely hit of feeling good about the world. So, and this is the irony of success and achievement. So, you know, we might get a promotion at work and we feel great, or we might smash our time in a run or something, we feel great, or we get that relationship we want and we feel great. So we think, oh, the success created feeling great, I should have more success, or whatever it is. Actually, what happens is that once the self-mind that was seeking this, whatever it was, stops seeking, self abides, and you're no longer this seeky self, and you feel peace. Now, until the self-mind does what? Comes up with the next idea of what you need to do, right? Right? So, oh, now I've got to get promoted again. It's the same with a food substance. You know, we really, really want that piece of sugar or something. So we have it and it feels great. Oh, it feels so good. Oh, wow, wow, wow. And for a moment, it's lovely. And then 2 minutes later, you go, what did you eat that for? I didn't need all of those. The same mind did both. The same mind was the one saying, get it, get it, get it, get it, get it, get it. Have the cookie, have the cookie, have the cookie, you want the cookie. And then a minute later, it goes, you shouldn't have had the cookie. You don't need the cookie. The same mind does that, right? It's seeking, and then it's judging. So it's fascinating to see what that mind is up to, what I call the separate self mind, the conceptual mind, once it's self-identified. When we're in flow, we live more from obviousness. Stuff just turns up. We just like, oh yeah, I'll do that. That happens. Yeah, opportunities pop up. More synchronicity and serendipity as well.
How does this relate to, now that you mentioned these, the mind is having the same thoughts, like, for example, eat that cake, and then judging you for eating the cake. So from a trauma sensitive perspective, in trauma informed coaching or trauma informed therapy, it's like different parts in you. So there's a part in you that wants to eat that cake, and once you eat that cake, there's a part in you that says, oh, look, you can't even stick to a diet. So how does that relate to your concept?
Well, those different parts are all thought, right? So we can call them different parts. And I used to do parts integration in NLP, hypnotherapy. So you're absolutely very familiar with that. But really, at one level, are they part of the capacity or the content? Well, they're content. They may look like they're coming from different bits, though are different parts of our programming. And you could make up stories about, oh, that came from my mother because she was very controlling, and that came from the, you know. So we can make up all sorts of lovely narratives about where the parts come from. And absolutely, that will turn up for people. No question about it. But the solution, if you like, or what do I do about that, is exactly the same, in that you see whether you think it's part A, B, C, D, or E, it's all the same. It's content. So it's real, but never true. It's real, but never true. Now, the fact that the mind says, well, that bit's more important than that bit. So the mind will sometimes say, those thoughts, yeah, you can let go of those thoughts. They're silly. You don't need those thoughts anymore, right? Oh, okay. But those thoughts, no, that's real. That's life. That's me. That's my 10 years of, you know, conditioning and programming. So the mind kind of makes judgments about what it feels like is legitimate and what isn't. Now, what's interesting is when we, and the mind's always evolving, there's realisations. Realisations is the capacity for one set of thinking, perceptions and mindsets to dissolve and a new one to arise, right? That's what realisations are. It's how we go from, it's how we survive and thrive, really. It's realisation. Now, when we're in trauma, you know, what's happened is we've got a blockage in that realisation process. You know, that there's a sublaction, that there's something sticking. Again, these are all just sort of metaphor words in the system that the mind can't see through. But the capacity for realisation can release that, because we know people don't get stuck in trauma forever, right? Despite how it might appear. So the question therefore is, well, what's stopping the realisation process from someone seeing through their own trauma, going, okay, that, you know, what happens is, and it's the self's resistance, thinking it needs that behavior or construct to be okay. That's why it doesn't release trauma. Now, once we wake up to the fact that actually that's all, and this is with no disrespect to people who are in the reality of trauma, but when we get to see that that's all an illusion, right? That's an avatar. That there's a me behind that is completely undamaged by that, like the sky and the weather or the TV screen and the Netflix. Once we realize that what I truly am, when we shift our epicenter of our identity, is if we believe we are the separate self, then that does get damaged. That gets battered around in the storm, right? If we're a bird in the sky, we get battered around in the storm. But when we realize we're the sky, oh, yes, that is a turning up on the screen of perception, those thoughts and feelings and sensations. But I am feeling proof. I am thought proof, right? Just to put language on it. Doesn't matter. Just like we don't care when a kid has a tantrum. We're like, oh, they'll get over it. So, but when we self-identify as the self that's been traumatized, then it sticks. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It does. But we're focusing in the wrong place. Now, people need to be relationally ready to explore that. I'm not saying this is still a bullet, literally, but you'd be surprised how people can hear it. So,
I'm so glad I got you on this show. You know that, don't you?
well, it's some food for thought, Darren, and it's not the echo chamber, right? This is different and fresh. And what I would urge people to do, they've been listening to this, and some of it's made sense, and some of it sounds like complete and utter whatever. I would say listen to it again. Then, if you're really curious, you know, check out some of the other things that I've you know, got on podcasts or YouTube, and just check it out for yourself. I don't want anyone to believe this. I want people to experience it and just to notice themselves that actually we've innocently, invisibly been hoodwinked as to what we are. And, you know, I've although I now point to what I would call the direct path to this, I've been on the indirect path. I've gone via the therapy and the counseling and the NLP and the 20 years of this and that and that and that and that and that. And it's probably in the last sort of 4 or 5 years I've gone, oh my gosh, this is way simpler than I thought. But it's hard to see that from where we are now if we don't have that beautiful curiosity. Now, you guys have got some of that curiosity. I can see it going on in your eyes right now. You're going, oh, what? And at least you're open to inquire, right? Some people just go, no, I'm not interested. So just opening the door a little bit to inquire in a different way, right? Because we can't inquire using the thinking mind. The thinking mind will get really caught up with this. And it gets really annoyed with this, the thinking mind. Because it kind of goes round in circles. So if we realize there's something before the thinking mind, the thinking mind's incredibly utilitarian and useful for doing stuff on spreadsheets and working out lots of stuff. It's not useful for understanding what we are. It's a faculty of the system. It's not the system. And also what's beautiful is science is now catching up. Science, there are some scientists now, Bernardo Kastrup, Don Hoffman, people like that, who are going, oh yeah, the consciousness has to be first. Where at the moment we're in a paradigm of materialism, physicalism, which says the material world, atoms, molecules, quarks, create consciousness. The brain's made of atoms and molecules, and consciousness comes from the brain. That's what we're told, right? Science now is starting to go, it's called the hard problem of consciousness. They've had 20 years to fix it and they haven't been able to fix it. Well, work it out. And now science is going, yeah, I think it could be consciousness first, as in consciousness being the mind, and then the appearance of matter, atoms and molecules, appears in consciousness, not consciousness comes from atoms and molecules. Because even though they're smashing particles into smaller and smaller things, that's what they're doing in CERN with the Higgs boson, they still can't find consciousness. Even they break it down into tiny weeny little things, they still can't find it. So they're realizing everything's dark matter, which is 99% of what they're seeing now. Well, maybe that's because matter isn't fundamental. Matter is an appearance. And what we are is one mental field, which individuates. So think whirlpools and eddies. You know, take some water. So what we all are is water. And then we individuate into little whirlpools, little eddies, made of the same thing. So individuated, but we're all the same. At that level of the true I. At the avatar level, we're all different. At the level of the water, we're all the same.
So I'm just wondering, what's the difference to spirituality where we see, or where it says we are all divine human beings or divine spirits just in a physical body? And when we die, the body dies, but our
and I would
still
point to
alive.
that as well. I just wouldn't use that spiritual language, because I don't use the spiritual language because people tend to get triggered by spiritual language. So as I said with Taste the Mango, what we're doing in Taste the Mango is taking all the esoteric spiritual language out of it. But this, what I'm talking about, this, if it needs you to sit somewhere and have a conceptual wrapper, it would be called direct path or pathless path non-duality, which is a form of spirituality.
Mm.
So that's what I say. Mystics over years and years and millennia have been pointing to this. Spiritual traditions have pointed to this. Just they've then put their own wrapper on it, and interesting language, esoteric language, and then rules. Go, well, you can only have this when you've been doing meditation for 20 years, or you know, and different seekers of, you know. But what we're trying to do, or I'm trying to do, is point to it so directly and simply, without all the rigmarole of esoteric mysticism, and just go direct experience, direct inquiry is another word for direct experience. Just go and see what you can see. And that's what we guide people to on our programs. That's what we do. We guide people to see that, but in a very simple way, not in a practice-based way or anything like that. I mean, there is some exploring needed to be done, but it's not like, oh, you've got to do this for 10 years now, or you've got to, you know, it's just see it. And it's taking it. What's so fascinating is we have to loosen our fascination with our content, because we are fascinated by our content, by what we think, what we perceive, what we feel. That's where the shiny stuff is for us, and that's where we go. Isn't it interesting when someone has a realization, they want to come and tell you about the realization? Oh, I realized this, I realized this. The really fascinating bit is the fact you can have a realization. Wow, I've had it, you know, that's fascinating. The content, but we're so fascinated by ourselves, and there's been a deification of the self over the last 50, 100 years as well, particularly in Western culture. So we're all about me. We're not we.
Yeah, I can agree with that one.
Now, I realize I've taken lots of your time, so apologies for that. But hopefully it's been fascinating.
Super interesting.
Maybe we have to do a part 2. I don't know. Go and check it out.
I was already thinking of that part. I was already thinking of that, Piers, because we had so much more to, you know, we could have asked about, you know, yourself and what good, and even about when we met. But, you know, obviously we're conscious of time. Again, it's that consciousness again. It's there again. it's I'd love to get you on another part, you know, so we can delve into this a bit more. I think it's possibly that tipping point that people need to see and hear about and notice in order for them to change.
Yeah.
So it'd be great to have this
Well,
conversation.
what I would invite you to do, and this to be for you guys and for any listeners, is happy to do another part, but I'll also suggest that check out some of our other little inquiry podcasts and things, and have a little play with this. Doesn't take long, just a few minutes here and there. Have a little play with it, and then come back and we'll have another chat about it. Going, well, I tried that. You know, this is what I noticed. So I can post some links or whatever to what we do with Taste the Mango and Quality of Mind. Have a little play with it, and then we can chat again.
Send me some links for us. We'll put them onto our YouTube channel for everybody to see it and have a bit of a practice with and play with. So I think it's really important that we take into account this. And I'm certainly going to be doing it anyway. But yeah, send us the links and we'll get them listed out there.
Well, it's great that you've got that curiosity, because that's all it needs, right? Because in a way, if you're a human being, this is fascinating. I mean, in my mind, right? Because it's everything ripples out from here. If we can start to see more about this, everything starts to look a little different, and that's beautiful. That's lovely. And it's sort of, you know, the most common feedback we get from our programs is, why didn't I know this before? But if you talk to a 7-year-old, they go, I know. You know, so we've all been here 30, 40 years ago, right? However old you are, right? We've all had this freedom and this joy, but we thought that was because we were only 4 years old. We thought that was, oh, that's age. No. You can have it as a whatever age you are, but we're much closer to it when we're kids, because that self-mind is not as busy.
I just want to touch before we shoot off.
Yeah.
When you've got this, where's this tipping point for that when it comes to businesses? Where does it apply to that?
I mean, for anyone, it's when they had the aha, the realization, oh, wow, yeah, this is not just an idea. It's not a tool. This is what I am, right? And that's what I call a realization, that kind of pops. It's like popcorn, right? Now, then once we had some people would fancily call it awakening. It's a bit of a rubbish word, but you know, once we have that, then what I would do in the coaching is point them to, so that's where we'd start with anyone, any client. And then in business, entrepreneurs or whatever, you start to see the implications of this in your business. And that could be in how you're dealing with your business partner or your staff, because you start to see, oh my God, I've got a lot of thinking about them. Actually, they're not that. They're also this, right? Or you start to see that they were striving and seeking success in their business, and that's why they're working so hard and their work-life balance is out of kilter, because they think in order to do better, you've got to think more and do it. And so they start to realize that flow state is the secret sauce, right? They start to see less is more, you know. And sometimes, you know, a lot of entrepreneurs, when they're first starting their business, they love their first year. They're in flow, there's ease. And then when they start to build up, scale up, they get thinking pressure going on. Oh, I've got investors now to make happier. I've got salaries to pay. And they load it on the self. They load it on. And then they get out of flow. And then that makes other things go wrong, right? So it's crucial in business, because this helps the main asset of a business, i.e. the people, perform better. And you see a lot of the things you were doing was so unnecessary, because they were slightly completely pointing in the wrong direction. So it unlocks loads of, as I say, peace, performance, and potential. Well-being, clarity, agility, ability to deal with ambiguity, which is a lot of what business is about. How do I deal with that? Decision making, you know, clarity, obviousness, dealing with separate realities, you know, people that don't agree with you, all this stuff we have to deal with in business. You know, being able to say, you know, creativity, innovation, not being too attached to particular outcomes. It's relevant, totally relevant, all of it.
Yeah, definitely a part 2 here.
Yeah,
I can
good.
definitely see I'm making a note. Part 1. There's part 1. Okay. Right. Well, mate, thank you very much for being here today. We'll definitely look forward to the next bit. We'll arrange that together. Alexandra, anything because my head's
I'm still
else.
processing.
Good. As I said, listen again. Have a playback.
We will be doing.
Yeah.
But anybody want to get in touch with Piers? Obviously, he's online. Piers, do you want to give a few?
Yeah. So
details? 5
Piers
minutes of fame
Thurston,
while we're on here.
Yeah, Piers Thurston on LinkedIn. Quality of Mind podcast. Quality of Mind on Substack. Quality of Mind on YouTube. qualityofmind.biz on the website. So LinkedIn, web, YouTube, podcast, Substack. Substack's quite new, playing with that, it's quite fun. But if you just Google Quality of Mind or Piers Thurston, it's all there. And I'm always up for answering a message if I can on this, because I love, as you can tell, talking about it. So if anyone's genuinely curious, I want to know. And the other resource we have is called Taste the Mango. There's a YouTube channel on Taste the Mango. So Taste the Mango, if you put Taste the Mango into YouTube or Taste the Mango Inquiry, it will come up.
All right.
Yeah, me and Alexandra have got a thing for mango smoothies when we first met in South Africa.
There we go.
When we first met in Kenya, sorry. So yeah, we have a bit of a thing. We have a joke about mango smoothies. We still get to get round to getting another one.
Brilliant.
Right, thank you, Piers. Appreciate that. Again, thanks to all our supporters, in particular Promo Doodle, the Professional Bodyguard Association, BDMCC, and Mira Gavazio. And we do have our donation pages for the Mind Core on GoFundMe and Easy Fundraising. Thanks, Piers. Definitely looking forward to part 2. And thanks, Alexandra. And any further messages, Alexandra, that I've missed off because it's battered?
No, just comment, like, share. We really appreciate
comment, like, share.
your support.
And thank you guys for being up for the conversation. So I appreciate that.
It was great.
Thanks, Piers.
Thank you so much, Piers.
Look forward to next time. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.